All right, so we've now finished the Identify Stakeholders process here in the 6th edition of the PMBOK and from the crowd training the PM City. Let's go back and review the inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques of Identify Stakeholders. Well, first, obviously starting with the inputs, we need to know what are the plans. So we have to look at the project management plan, and I like to draw the project management plan as a big file folder because inside are a bunch of different folders, including how we're going to manage our stakeholders, but even how we're going to manage our scope and our resources and all of these, various places in our plans that, well, we're going to start identifying some stakeholders. Because obviously, if we have some resources, then those human resources are going to be stakeholders. They hold a stake in our project. They're affected by it. Also, there could be various different business documents that could lay into for instance, I'm going to write down here, business docs, business cases, or other, here I'll draw a little suitcase or attaché case to kind of show that there could be many places that we have some rationale or some executive agreements that are going to say, well, we're looking for this, or even other projects that might be in motion. And the project charter gives us another excellent point onto, well, why are we doing this in the first place? What's the goal? What's the objective? What's the whole executive standpoint? And in that are some key stakeholders, like who are we making this for? What department is going to be? Who's you, the project manager, as identified as a stakeholder? And then beyond the business documents, there could be many other project documents that we are using throughout the project. Things like a risk register. Those risks are identified, so we should probably identify some stakeholders in it too. Maybe even the change logs or issues or the requirements. All these different documents that could be very useful. Also, we might have agreements with customers, right? I'll write agree right here. Because, if we're making this for a particular customer or building or company or, some whatever, then in that case, then they hold a stake. I mean, if this is for their end users, if this is for their, or even our own department. But also, too, if we're getting our procurements, like if we have a delivery team that is bringing things in, or if there are contractors on our team, then they all hold a stake too, because, well, these suppliers want to be able to make more money and more business from you. These contractors want to hold a stake because they're affected positively or negatively in the success or failure of our project. Also, we are products of our environment and our business. So I'm going to just draw a bunch of businesses here because our culture, our environment, our what we call enterprise environmental factors play a factor and influence definitely how we go about identifying our stakeholders. And maybe there are even some guidelines and templates and procedures that can also assist us, and those are our organizational process assets. And those are all the inputs. And so since we've reviewed those, let's review the tools and techniques that we talked about in this class. Well, we're going to have to find these stakeholders, right? Some way. So, however we're going to look at it and find our, sleuth, or, if I'm drawing this magnoscope or magnifying glass, but we have to gather the data in some way or another. Maybe it is just talking it through. Maybe if we're, building a new program for our soccer team and, we have to go about asking a survey to all of our existing, say, season ticket holders or whatever the case might be. But we've got to be able to collect that information some way so that we can be able to make sense of it or to dig things up. And again, sometimes it's just talking or researching or looking things up. And when we get that too, we got to make sense of it, right? We have to, take a look at, the various stakeholders that we have looked at and analyze them, maybe even analyze the documents that we have and the information that we've gathered. But we have to do some data analysis. I'm kind of running out of room there, but and also helpful in that gathering and analysis is being able to, represent in some way, maybe with personas, and or even just showing graphically different stakeholders, different levels, different approaches, different styles, whatever the case may be. But it's going to be helpful, especially if there's a lot of information, to take it and make more sense of it, or at least be able to visually be able to represent that in maybe some mapping or other representation. And sometimes, or oftentimes, we're going to do a lot of meetings and talking and discussions and conversations, including interviewing and being able to brainstorm. Right, that's one of the tools and techniques. But to be able to talk formally, informally about it, and then sometimes, we just kind of know. We've been there before, or we've seen projects like this, and so we can use our person here standing and thinking, using our expert judgment, and that could come from education, experiences, something that happened earlier in the project, because this is sort of an ongoing thing. It is not just a one and done. We do it at the very start of the project. We always should be thinking about who holds a stake, and those stakeholders are going to change potentially throughout our project. All right, those are the tools and techniques. And finally, of course, are the outputs. Well, with all this, the idea is to create a list of all the stakeholders that we have identified, and we simply call that a stakeholder register. Okay, and what's on that is obviously dependent on the project, but sometimes too, based on this, we might find, there's got to be some changes made, and we want to then request those changes so that they can go through the integrated change request. And then the plans will probably be updated, so I'll draw our project management plan again, our big file folders, because those will be updated based on what we've identified, and those reflections, as well as maybe to the various different project documents, such as the procurement documents or issues, because if we discover through the identification, we never thought of this group of people or this government body that might affect our ability to get an approval, well, we should probably make note of that and point it out in our documentations. Okay, so that is the recap of the Identify Stakeholders process in the 6th edition of the PMBOK from the crowd training.